this lesson, we're going to look at an approach to improvising using individual chords as our basis rather than scales. Now, the first thing to say is that when we look at the chord chart for this song, with a view to improvising over it, we have to learn to apply a sort of filter. We have to separate out the main structural chords from those that are used more ornamentally. This is a little bit like applying what we learned in the lesson on chord substitution, only backwards. When we were talking about basic chord substitution, we discussed how we start with the basic vanilla chords, the underlying chords that form the structure of a song, and then replace some of them with chord substitutions to make the sequence a bit more interesting. Well, now we need to reverse that process by looking at this sequence and stripping out the substitutions to get back to the underlying vanilla sequence. First, strip the chords back to their simpler forms. So, for example, instead of playing A minor sixth, a chord that comprises 4 different notes, we replace that with A minor, the underlying triad. Next, particularly where you have more than one chord change per bar, test to see if each chord is actually essential to the structure of the song. And the best way to do this, I think, is to sing or hum the melody of the song along with the chord, and check to see whether the chord actually needs to change to support changes in the melody. Summertime. Until we come to the bit about the jumping fish, we're quite happy just sitting on the A minor chord. It may not sound like great accompaniment, but it doesn't sound wrong, it doesn't sound out of tune. However, as soon as we hit the word jumping, it's clear that we can no longer support that with the A minor chord. Fish are jumping. So we move instead to D minor as a simplified version of the D minor 7th, which normally appears at this point in the sequence. Fish are jumping. And we can continue then with that D minor chord until we get to the high cotton. Fish are jumping. Once again, the melody forces the change. This time to E. Fish are jumping. The third line works fine just with A minor again. Your papa's rich and your mama's good. But at the beginning of the next line, we're once again forced to change. This time to C. So from the A minor, your papa's rich and your mama's good looking. for that whole of that bar, but actually it is smoother if we change to the A minor halfway through. So hush, little baby. So let's do that. In the next bar, we have a similar situation. We could just use the F chord. So hush, little baby, hush, don't cry. Or we could just use the E chord. So hush, little baby, hush, don't cry. But neither of them sound completely comfortable, so it really does work best if we use both. First the F, then the E. So hush, little baby, hush, don't cry. So we'll keep both those chords in. And then notice we end back on the A minor where we started. So, I hope you can see, or rather hear, how testing the chords against the melody helps you strip the sequence down to its simplest viable form. This simplification of the chord sequence makes the task of improvising directly over the chords a lot less daunting. As a next step, I'm going to make a decision to approach the first 12 bars and the last 2 bars of the song using arpeggio patterns. For me, this is an approach I find particularly easy when you have fairly long passages without too many changes. Which is why I'm not going to attempt it over bars 13 and 14, where the chord changes speed up. So, which arpeggio pattern to use over the first chord of A minor? Well, referring back to the chord substitutions lesson, we know that there are several different chords that will blend with an A minor chord. Basically any of the chords that are built by extending an A minor triad. And they include A minor 6th, A minor 7th, A minor 9th, A minor 11th, A minor 13th, to name just a few. But to keep things simple for this first lesson on this subject, let's just stick to the A minor 7th arpeggio, probably the most commonly used. To get you into habits useful in the long term, I've labelled the notes according to their position in the parent scale, in this case the scale of A major. So we start this pattern with the first finger on the A, fret 5 on the 6th string. Then we use the pinky to get the flatted 3rd, that's fret 8 on the 6th string. 3rd finger gets our 5th note of the scale, and that's fret 7 on the A string. 1st finger takes the flatted 3rd note, fret 5 on the D string, and then we complete our octave with our 3rd finger, fret 7 on the D string. So that first octave again, root, flat 3rd, 5th, flat 7th, root. Moving on to the next octave, we go up to the flat 3rd, under your 1st finger, 5th fret, 3rd string, straight across to the 5th, which is at the 5th fret on the B string, then the flat 7th with the pinky, fret 8 on the B string, and the top root note, fret 5 on the E string with the first finger. So all together. So notice that we're using the one finger per fret rule and playing straight across the fretboard. Whoops. Resist the temptation, if you can, to use the stronger fingers. And get that pinky working. Unlike with scales, where you can sometimes get away with minimising the use of your little finger, with arpeggios that's a lot harder, and you're much better off putting it to work early and getting it, you know, by using it a lot, it'll get stronger and using it will become easier, and that really will make you a lot more versatile. Now you may want to pause the video on this diagram while you practice this a bit. It's a really good idea to call out the interval names, root, flat third, fifth, flat seventh, as you play them. Being able to identify these notes easily will, as mentioned, pay dividends in the long run. So having got that pattern under your belt, let's move straight on and look at a pattern that would be useful for the next chord, the D minor seventh. Now, to reduce our travel around the fretboard, we'll use the pattern that's rooted on the fifth string. And that looks like this. And here's the diagram. Of course, it's pretty much the same pattern as off the E string, but you have to shift to accommodate the second string tuning anomaly. So whereas for the A minor seventh we go straight across at this point, with the D minor seventh, instead of going back all the way to that note, we just go to this 6th fret and then up to the 5th fret on the E string. So we've got this nice little pattern of 3 notes in a row. Then at the top end of this scale we've got a little slide up to hit that top D, that root note at the top of the octave there, the 10th fret. Here's the diagram again, if you'd like to pause the video while you get this one down. Next, let's learn the dominant 7th arpeggio pattern, again rooted on the A string, as this is going to work great over the E chord. Okay, so the first note is the E at fret 7 on the A string, which you'll notice I'm playing with my second finger. This leaves the first finger free to hit the 3rd note, and that's at fret 6 on the D string. Then the pinky takes the 5th note, and that's on the D string, fret 9. For the next note we make a little fingering adjustment, bringing the first finger up a fret to find our flat 7 note, which is at the 7th fret on the G string. And that means our third finger can take the root note to complete the first octave, and that's E fret 9 on the G string. To get the third note, we fold straight across to the B string there, and that's at fret 9. Then we've got the top 5th, the B note, fret 7 on the top E string. Our little finger can then grab the D, which is our flatted 7th note in this key, and that's fret 10 on the top E string. And then we slide up to hit the root note E to complete that top octave, fret 12 on the top E string. Come back pretty much the same roots. I'm a bit lazy here, I just stick to the fingering right down to the D string here, and then just allow my first finger to shift down to take that third note on the D string at fret 6 there. So here's the diagram again. Okay, so those are 3 patterns that I'm sure you're going to find will come in useful over and over and over again, so well worth investing the time in learning them and getting fluent with them. The next step is to make sure that we can grab them when we need them. Is to make sure that we've got the root notes instantly, the starting root notes instantly identifiable. So we need to have that identified as our A root note on our first finger. That note, 5th fret on the A string, is our D root note, also on our first finger. And the E at fret 7 on the 5th string, but this time with our 2nd finger. So it's worth spending a minute just getting used to that idea. E, D, E, A. E, A, D, A, E. Just really make sure you can grab those notes with the right finger without having to think too hard. Now let's play through the arpeggios one at a time. Nice and slowly and rhythmically to start with, like this, starting with A, D, E, back to A again. D, E, gradually picking up speed. A. ride your errors as you make them, just like I do. Once you've got those pretty much on automatic, it's time to move on. And the next step is to play the arpeggios against the backing track. You can access the backing track, as always, from the toolbox to the right of the screen. So, starting with A minor 7th. Okay, so we start by playing the straight arpeggios, one note per main beats. Up and down, where you can. Let's change to D minor. E7. Back to A minor. And now just play the root notes C, A, F, E over those 4 chords and back to the arpeggio. Once you're used to that, you can speed it up a little bit. This stuff is pretty familiar to you, then a couple of times through this process should be enough to familiarise yourself and you can move on with this lesson. But if playing arpeggio patterns is fairly new to you or completely new to you, then please allow probably a few hours of practicing that before moving on. It's important to get that stage down before you attempt to mess about with the pattern. Once you're well oriented and confident that you're keeping up with the changes, then begin to mess around with the arpeggio patterns a bit. Perhaps start simply by jumping across the patterns a bit more, rather than playing them linearly, and vary the rhythm a bit. Maybe something like this. Experiment with adding extra notes in. either chromatically arpeggio patterns in with any of the minor scales that we explored in the last lesson. That would be the A natural minor scale, the A harmonic minor scale, even the A blues scale or the A minor pentatonic scale. Perhaps something like this. Let's start with a bit of A natural minor scale blended in with the arpeggio patterns. Chromatic, natural minor, harmonic, blues. Now, as well as using the arpeggios, you can of course use the actual chord shapes themselves. And this is a particularly useful trick when the chords change rather too fast to better keep up with them using other methods. So let's see how I might use that trick over bars 13 and 14, where we have that quicker change C to A minor, F to E. So far we've just been following the root note pattern pretty much on that. But let's start now by grabbing a couple of notes out of the first chord. So for example, I'm thinking of the chord C major in this configuration, the A-shaped C, and I'll just nick these two notes from out of that. That's the C note on the third string, on the G string, plus the G note on the fourth string, on the D string. And then I think to myself, right, next chord is A minor. Now how can I change this shape to fit an A minor without changing it more than necessary? Well, A minor chord already has a C note in it, so we can leave that there, but it doesn't have the G note in it, has the A note instead, so we can just shift that note up to there. I'm literally just playing on the middle two strings here. And then for F, well, we can keep the A note in, we can actually keep the C note in, and we can add the F note there. and then take that whole thing back a fret for E. We can keep that note in or not, it doesn't matter. So that can be something like C, A minor, E, F, beg your pardon, F, E. If you're well versed with your note names on the fretboard, and in particular you've done a good job of learning the cage system, then you'll find it quite easy to find literally hundreds of different ways of expressing a sequence like this. I'll just demonstrate a few of these chord-based ideas against the backing track. So just the tip of a very, very large iceberg for you there. But these ideas, these foundational ideas, will help you build a base camp in jazz improvising land from which you can set out on many interesting adventures. In the next few lessons, we're going to continue to develop the chord-based and arpeggio-based improvising ideas. But the emphasis is going to shift to one of the most critical differences between jazz and blues playing, and this is swing rhythm. So I look forward to you joining me for that. Meanwhile, let's play out from this lesson with another run over against the backing track, and we'll have a bit of a jam on it. I'll start by doing a couple of verses demonstrating all the different ways of soloing that we've covered in these two lessons, and then I think I'll leave the backing track running and hand the soloing over to you.